All right, guys, welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick are doing our preview and prediction for college football week 8, the Thursday and Friday night games. Interesting slate on deck before getting things leading to a massive Saturday. We'll start here with a Sun Belt matchup between Georgia State and Marshall. 9-point line in favor of the Thundering Herd. You look at a Georgia State offense, only putting up 21 points per game. I think Christian Felix has been a good quarterback for them. Obviously the Pitt and Penn State transfer. Has 5 interceptions over the last 3, though, versus a solid pass defense, 78th in FBS. But they got torched in the fourth quarter against Georgia Southern, blowing that game. 20-point fourth quarter lead on the road, and they blew it, and they ended up losing that game. Ted Hurst, Dorian Fleming, they've been standouts at pass catcher for Georgia State. So this is a passing attack putting up, over 250 yards per game. And, Hurst has 434 and 5 touchdowns, some phenomenal numbers there. This is a team that doesn't run the ball all that well, only 109 yards per game, even though Freddie Brock is a respectable runner, 306 and 2 scores this year. It's been flat out awful for them the last 2 games. Marshall themselves are not all that good against the run, so maybe this is an opportunity for them to get exposed a little bit, giving up 175 yards per contest, even though they're pretty stout against Georgia Southern. I think they've progressed at a solid tune compared to how bad they were against the Power 5 teams early on in the season, or Power 4 teams, I guess you could say. Marshall, again, they're not that good against the run, so I think there might be some balance here for the Georgia State offense. On the other side of things, the Georgia State defense, they've been no good in any regard, and the Marshall run game has been very consistent, 200-plus yards in 3 straight games after playing 2 good Power 4 opponents. QB Braylon Braxton, a big threat with his legs. Not much from a passing perspective, but he's been protecting the football this year. 7 touchdowns, the no picks. I anticipate he'll be the main quarterback here, even though Stoner Earl has played, most of the year as the starter. Seems like Braxton gives them a better dynamic, Nick, with what they want to do on the ground, alongside A.J. Turner, who has got 540 and 2 touchdowns. So I'm not sure what they're going to do from a quarterback perspective, but it seems like Marshall's offense should click a great deal against this Panther defense.
It's a very interesting matchup in the Sun Belt between 2 teams sort of towards the bottom of the conference. Division rivals. They both recently lost to Georgia Southern, with Marshall blowing that massive lead late in the game on the road last Saturday, with Georgia State losing a couple weeks prior to Georgia Southern. This is a Georgia State team that did beat Vanderbilt early in the year, which is kind of crazy how it's all kind of transitioned. I know their social media team had some fun with that. Look at this offense. I think the quarterback play for Georgia State's been solid enough. I think their quarterback has been really good at times, 1,200 yards passing for him with the 9 touchdowns. The 5 picks obviously is not a great number. They're struggling to run the ball at a successful clip, which I think is really part of the problem. Is they don't really seem to have much efficiency on the ground. They only have 546 rush yards this season, 3.9 yards per attempt, and 3 rushing touchdowns. So a low rushing attack for this Georgia State team, which I think is part of the problem so far this year. So they're not able to chew clock and not able to run the ball. Brock is leading the way with 306 and 2 scores for them. Not a great offense on the ground. The defense is not helping them in that regard, because you're putting your defense on the field over and over again, which I think is certainly playing a role in the Georgia State Panthers falling to 2 and 3. When I look at the offense for Marshall, this is an offense I think is a really fun, exciting unit with Braxton under center. I didn't think Stone Earl was a bad quarterback, right? 7 touchdowns, 2 picks, 54% comp rate's a bit of an issue, but 600 yards passing is not bad. But Braxton adds that sort of ability to be solid on the ground. 2 rushing touchdowns, 203, and 7 yards per carry for him, although Earl himself is a decent running quarterback as well, so it's curious to see who they're going to end up running with come in this matchup Thursday night. I think A.J. Turner is the best back on the field between the 2 teams. 540 for him and 2 scores, really solid numbers so far this season, while Christian Fitzpatrick is a really talented wide receiver with 3 receiving touchdowns. Elijah Metcalf has 3 of his own as well for this Marshall offense. They both have Fitzpatrick almost has 300 yards receiving, and Metcalf is just below 200. I think both these players are really talented at wide receiver. They're very dominant physical pieces, especially Fitzpatrick, who's a really solid jump ball player. I like Marshall a little bit more in this one. I think they just have a little bit more talent on offense that's neutralizing the defenses. Are rather balanced in this matchup, but overall, I think you're going to give the edge to Marshall because I think their offensive running back room and wide receiver room is very strong.
Yeah, both offensive lines have been quite good, so I'm going to call that even at that position. Biggest problem here is that for Georgia State, they're 130th nationally in tackles for loss and 104th in sacks, so it's going to be hard for them to create negative plays compared to, even though they do have 2 good linebackers, Xavier Robinson and Justin Abraham. But on the other side, Marshall, they're not playing elite defense by any means, but I think they're playing quite fair, especially before that fourth quarter against Georgia Southern, against App State. That's a game that was more of a shootout. but they still kind of did their thing to get off the field. And then, they have a great player, Mike Green, coming off the edge, Josh Moten at corner. So they have better players, I think, on defense overall. That's why I'm going to take Marshall to cover in this one, 9-point line at home. I'll go ahead and take them with the points in Huntington, Nick. You're going with a very similar score as well. And again, I just don't think they're going to be able to create enough negative plays, that being the Panthers, even though I think their offense might have something for them early. I think at the end of the day, this run game will take over.
I agree with you. I think Marshall's going to win this game. I think Jaden Yates at linebacker for Marshall's a really talented player. 56 total tackles, the leading tackler between the two teams. He's a really solid linebacker there. I like what he can do. He's really been a good player so far this year for this Marshall team. It's been tough at times for Marshall, right? They played tougher teams early on in their schedule, playing Ohio State and Virginia Tech both on the road. That loss to Georgia Southern really set things back for them, though. Blowing a lead to that team is certainly disappointing for a team that had ambitions of potentially winning this conference. At home on a Thursday night, they have a really good crowd up there in Huntington. Those fans, they show out. They do support their Thundering Herd. I expect the crowd to be pretty solid for this 7 o'clock Thursday night kick. I like Marshall in this one. They're going to cover the spread as well, get the job done, and move on, take a next step forward a little bit. I said they're falling off in the conference a little bit, but they still have an opportunity to catch potentially JMU or Coastal Carolina in front of them, or Georgia Southern in that division, depending on how things shake out. I do like the Thunder Herd to win this one and cover the spread.
Now we look at going down around the same time at 7:30 on ESPN. Boston College, Virginia Tech, underrated ACC matchup this week, and I'm happy it's on, the weekday. So we can tune into this one. Boston College, the run game is still the identity of this football team, but they've not been very good the last 2 weeks. Only 65 yards against Virginia in a loss. Against Western Kentucky, they only had 111. When they played Missouri, they got stifled and had only 49 yards, even though the pass game kept them into that one. Then 152 against Michigan State, a team that's pretty respectable on defense there, but the run game is just not taking over early, like we saw early on in the season. Obviously, Thomas Castellanos, that is, did not play against WKU, but he's back now and certainly is going to have to showcase his legs in this one. He's been a pretty solid passer, 254 yards, 2 scores, did have 2 picks in that loss against Virginia. 2 picks each in his respective in the Eagles' respective 2 losses. Again, though, this run game has just not been that great, but they do have Castellanos' legs, a nice group of backs. Treshaun Ward, I think he's got a lot of speed. Turbo Richard has really stepped up. Kyle Robichaud, he's more of a physical runner. So they have different guys who are going to get involved in this backfield and be, impactful. Thomas, again, good as a passer. The wide receiver group is underperforming, though, and I certainly don't think they're world beaters by any means. But for Lewis Bond to be pretty much the only guy doing anything with 30 grabs and over 350 yards, I think it's a little ridiculous. I think Reed Harris is capable of a lot more. Kamari Morales does lead the team with 3 touchdowns, so you got to be happy with his production. Jerron Bradley, though, a very good player, doing absolutely nothing. Jaden McGowan as well. I'm not sure if it's health. These guys aren't getting onto the field very much, though, even though they've played in every single game this season. This Boston College offense, though, going against a very suspect run D from Virginia Tech, a group that I think has kind of underperformed the last couple of seasons under Brent Pry. 136 allowed against Stanford. Pretty good number, but against Miami, they give up some big runs. Against Rutgers, they gave up 153 in that one. So they've been solid, Nick, but again, I'd say suspect's kind of a good word to put it, because I don't know if they're going to come in here and just overwhelm the Eagles' rushing attack.
I think the Eagles' rushing attack has a nice matchup advantage potentially in this one against a Virginia Tech defense against the run that has not been super phenomenal at times this year, like you alluded to. This attack for Boston College, a 946 total yards of rushing attempts on the ground, 4.1 yards per carry, and 9 rushing touchdowns, averaging 157.7 rushing yards per game. I think it's a really solid number at this point in the season, and we've seen it sort of pay off well when they beat Florida State early in the year. They beat some other teams early in the year. Castellanos, I think, is a really solid quarterback. Improving as a passer, still has a lot of room to grow. Just barely below 1,000 yards passing, 67% comp rate, 12 touchdowns to 4 picks. He looks confident. The 12 sacks, obviously that's a bit of an issue. The offensive line has not been phenomenal this year, and that's created some issues as of late. The 4 picks is not great either. I do like what they have here. I think, 4 deep in terms of people that could run the ball for this offense. Ward, Richard, Robichaud, and Castellanos. I think Ward's really solid. You expected him to be kind of the lead back here, 283 and 2 scores, 5.7 yards per carry is solid. Richard has stepped up and been good so far this year with the touchdown for him, and 207. Robichaud has been good as well with 2 scores, a bit of a, more of a third down back, short distance back, red zone sort of back. Castellanos is that kind of dual threat that you can rely on at times. I've been disappointed with the wide receiver room. I think it's a very fair assessment. Bond, though, has been a fun player to watch with his 2 receiving touchdowns. He's been a really solid player, having 30 receptions for this team, double the next highest receiving player on the team. I think Morales, you want to find a way to get him more involved outside of the red zone. He's a solid tight end for this team. Trayshawn Ward has 2 receiving touchdowns. I would like to see them spread the wealth a little bit more. I think they have a talented wide receiver room that's not being used to their full potential, but overall, this is an offense I like, and I like that matchup against the Virginia Tech defense for this offense.
Now, the Hokies do have 2 great linemen up front, Antoine Powell-Ryland and E.S. Pebbles. I mean, these guys are phenomenal, especially when it comes to rushing the passer. This is a good Boston College offensive line, though. Look at the Eagles' defense. They've been respectable on this side of the ball. They have some good players in their own right, including a guy a lot of people think will be a first-time All-American. And we've talked about this guy in the past, Nick, how he's a bright spot for BC. And now the rest of the nation's understanding how good Donovan Izurugaku really is with 11.5 TFL, 9 sacks. I mean, this guy's on an all-time heater right now. Cam Horsley, another one of those aforementioned players that's been a real standout. I like what Cam Arnold brings to the table as well. It's just announced today that one of their top corners, Amari Jackson, will be out for the year, so that's certainly not great. But for this respective matchup, Kyron Drones and his weapons have just been very inconsistent. 61% completion rating, 8 touchdowns, 4 picks, a little under 200 yards per game. For having guys like Jalen Lane, Daquan Feld, and Ollie Jennings, I mean, this passing attack, it's ridiculous, and it's a big reason why this team has underperformed already this season, and they're not even probably going to finish the year ranked, is because they cannot throw the ball really all that well. The rushing attack is still pretty good, though. 182 yards per game. Rachel Tootin, 605, 9 scores. Drones, 278 and 3 against the Boston College defense that has played, again, pretty well this year, especially against the run. The most they've allowed all year, 176 against Missouri. It's the only time this year they've allowed more than 130 yards on the ground. Maybe not the toughest of opponents, but I certainly think that if you were bad, you'd be getting outclassed by Virginia and Michigan State on the ground. So I think this is a good team. I think they might have potentially their worst outing against the run in this game, potentially 200 yards they allowed. I don't think they're going to get gashed by any means, Nick. I think this is a very competitive matchup, and I want you to kind of allude to this offense for VT and how they've been inconsistent and have underperformed, and it's why it's going to lead to a lot of close games, including this one where BC will cover.
I think this is an interesting matchup that has a limping in Virginia Tech offense that has some struggling as of late. They had a good game against Stanford, but they struggled against Miami. They struggled against Rutgers at time. I think there's some talented players. Ezerike for BC, 43 total tackles is a really impressive number. I really enjoyed watching him play. When you look at the offense for Virginia Tech, Keon Drones, I think, is a good quarterback, but he's made mistakes this year. Looked a little unconfident in the pocket at time. 8 touchdowns to 4 picks, 1,100 yards passing, 61% comp rate, taking 10 sacks. They have a solid back in Bryce Tootin, who's a really incredibly talented, nice back on the ground, 605 and 9 touchdowns for him. But I think Boston College finds a way to win this game because I think they will have a lot of success on the ground. I like to see them run the ball a lot here, run at a high clip, run frequently, try and attack the interior, try and attack what they can do on the ground. This O-line for Boston College, I know that Castellanos has gotten sacked a few times, but there's still a very strong physical unit that I like the matchup heading into Blacksburg. I know it's a tough road environment, and certainly on a night game, on a weeknight, could be difficult here, but I'd still believe that this Boston College offense firing on full cylinders on the ground is certainly tough, and we've seen Virginia Tech struggle against Rutgers on the ground. They struggled at times against some of their other opponents on their schedule on the ground. We saw Vanderbilt have success on the ground against them as well, which makes me feel like they're a little soft against the run. They do have some talented pieces, certainly, don't get me wrong. I think Antoine Powell-Ryland is a really talented, strong, physical player with 7 sacks on the year, but I just think that I like the matchup here for BC. I think they'll be able to run all over them. I think they're going to win this game outright, get the job done. It'll be close. It'll be closer, a lower scoring affair, but I think they will find a way to win this one on Thursday night.
Now moving to the Friday night slate, starting with Florida State and Duke, 7 p.m. ESPN2. Florida State, they don't have a 300-yard game at all this year. A much-needed bye week after just a horrendous start to the season. The only victory being a 14-9 one at home over Cal. And again, I expected this team not to be all that good this year, but I didn't think they would be this poor where they can't seem to manufacture anything. The offensive line, it was a pretty good unit coming into the season. They're putting up 58 rush yards per game. I mean, this is just laughable, quite frankly. DJ Uyunglele is down, probably out for the rest of the year. Wasn't playing very good anyways. Brock Glenn comes in against Clemson and puts up a respectable performance, 228, 2 scores and a pick. We've only seen him play against elite defenses, Nick. He played against Louisville and Georgia in his first 2 career starts, and his third comes against Clemson. These are all highly ranked teams that he played, and, it's been tough sledding for him for sure. So finally, maybe some normalcy where he gets to play a regular defense, one that has played pretty good in Duke. Certainly wouldn't call it, outstanding by any means. It's a pretty solid team that Manny Diaz has right now. Alex Howard at linebacker has been a real standout. Vincent Anthony, Aaron Hall, Wesley Williams. I mean, they're getting a collective effort from everybody on this defense. Love some of the guys they have in the secondary like Chandler Rivers and Terry Moore. So this is a defense that has played good. I think that Duke isn't all that good as a team, though. They've just benefited from a poor schedule. Got lucky against Northwestern. UConn almost pulled an upset there. Middle Tennessee State was doing good work, but they had like 3 straight turnovers and ended up gifting a big lead to the Blue Devils. Ended up being beating UNC by a point, and they just lost to Georgia Tech here. And you look at the offensive side of the ball for Duke, Malik Murphy playing pretty good. 14 touchdowns and 5 picks. The run game is getting respectable efforts out of Star Thomas, and then Jordan Moore has just been uncoverable for some of these lower tier opponents they're playing, while Eli Pancol also has 5 touchdowns. So I think Duke certainly overachieving at this point, Nick. Florida State, I think their offense might be in for a little bit more, of a better showing with a different quarterback now that seems like he's got some better upside. I don't think the weapons are all that good, and that's a big reason why they've struggled. But guys like Ja'Kai Douglas, Malik Benson, Kentron Portier, they should be, capable of making plays in a game like this. On the other side, the defense for FSU, they've just been really getting gutted against the run, which is pretty ridiculous because this is a much better front than that. Guys like Patrick Payton, Joshua Farmer, Daniel Lyons. This is a phenomenal D-line on paper. They've just underperformed. And, the only reason I'm picking Florida State to win this game is because it definitely seems like Duke's in for a disappointment at some point. And I also have their under 5.5 wins, Nick. And, they're a W away from hitting that. So there's no way I'm picking the Blue Devils here. 3-point line, though, will imply that's not all that crazy. What are your thoughts on this overall contest? And when you look at who has the edge, Duke has it at every single position. Mike Norvell has done a horrible job this year.
I think this is a matchup. We look at two teams, one that's extremely underachieving expectations and one that's extremely overachieving expectations. If you had told me this would be a matchup of teams that were 5-1 and 1-5 come the middle of October, I would say, yeah, Florida State's probably 5-1. They probably lost to Clemson. While Duke is not having a great season, they might have picked up a win against a weaker opponent early on. Maybe they beat maybe it was Middle Tennessee that they beat, or maybe it was UConn that they ended up beating. But I would not expect the script to be flipped. This is a Florida State team that we've waxed on and on about how bad this season is. So I'll save you the drama. I'll get off my soapbox. But I do think Brock Glenn is a decent enough quarterback, which is why I'm giving them 17 points in this game. I think they will find a way to get in the end zone because I think Brock Glenn is not a horrible quarterback, and I think you made a fair assessment there. Playing against defenses that aren't otherworldly might make him look decent at times. I don't think he's having an incredible day, but I think he'll have a decent enough day to get this team in the end zone once or twice, and maybe a defensive touchdown or something could potentially help out get that score to 17. I like Glenn. I don't think he's the future necessarily, but I think he's a serviceable quarterback that may get them 1 or 2 more wins this season. I think the running back room has been horrible for Florida State. They can't run the ball at all, which has been an absolute disaster. You read off the stats, just utterly disappointing and gross for this team. They've been bad against the run as well. People have run all over them. And now you bring in Duke, who's got Star Thomas, who I think has been really fun to watch. 528 and 3 touchdowns for him. He's been really good, while Peyton Jones is not bad either. Malik Murphy's been solid at quarterback. You kind of knew Murphy wouldn't be terrible for this offense. 1,400 yards passing, 14 touchdowns to 5 picks, 6% comp rate, just an average quarterback play. I think Murphy's a good enough player. Jordan Moore is certainly helping with that. He's a really talented player, 443 and 3 scores, while Eli Pancol has been really good in the red zone with 5 touchdowns so far this season. I like Duke in this one. I know it hurts your bet, but I got to go with the Blue Devils. They're just the better team across the board. It's really hard to find any sort of advantage for Florida State other than the defensive line, and even then that's a very slim advantage. This is a Duke's Blue Devils team that's certainly overachieving with Manny Diaz at the helm, looking to be a really smart hire. I know they played a very weak schedule, and that certainly is true, and they got to play some tougher teams, so maybe we'll learn a little bit more about this team as we get throughout the season. But a 5-1 start's pretty impressive. They moved to 6-1. That's really solid. This is a team that I think is a good unit overall. They've played some solid football so far this season. They're balanced on both sides of the ball. The defense has done their part. The offense has looked really good, scoring some points against lower opponents and being able to grind out tough wins. The defense getting the stops they need to get the job done. I like the Blue Devils in this matchup. I think they'll find a way to win this one by a touchdown or so and get the job done Friday night in Durham.
Now we look at an interesting contest that everyone circled in the preseason. I think it's still well worth circling, even though Purdue sits at 1-5. This line opened at like 30.5, 31, something like that. Bet all the way down to 27.5 in favor of the Ducks. A night game in West Lafayette for a top 5 team. That's usually spelled trouble if you're that team, especially one in Oregon coming off a major win against Ohio State. Came down to the final play. They were able to get the job done via a 500-yard effort from Dylan Gabriel in his passing attack. Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart put on an absolute clinic. Jordan James and the offensive line were able to have a steady approach on the ground. And I think for Purdue, it's been a disaster. 1-5, 149-0 in the opener. Lost by 59 to Notre Dame soon after that. Lost by over 40 plus points against Wisconsin. Have not really been competitive in many of these losses until last week, where Ryan Brown got the start. A redshirt freshman quarterback, 6'4", 210. had 297 yards, 3 touchdowns, also ran for 118. It was a QB-heavy approach. Walters, I think, was calling the offensive plays, which is interesting because he's a defensive coach. They were down 27-3 in that game. They rallied all the way back in the second half, took them to overtime, went for a 2-point conversion, came up just a tad short. But quite frankly, they probably should have beat Illinois for how good this offense looked in the second half. So you have two teams playing with a good bit of momentum, Nick. Max Clare at tight end for Purdue is very sound. Jamal Edrine as well. Devin McAbee at tight end. He is a running back, that is. He's a great player. 464 rushing and 2 scores. He's a dual threat back with 78 receiving and another touchdown. This is a Purdue team that, again, has not played very good this year, Nick, and this defense is flat out awful. They're giving up almost 40 points per contest. They've not really been able to contain anybody. It's 129th nationally there, giving up yards in bunches. Now you got to go against this Oregon offense that just did great things to one of the nation's top units. So it's certainly going to be a little scary, I think, for Purdue to try and hang around in this matchup. But I think they're going to cover, and I think they're going to play very close for a long time. I know that's very wild to predict, but let's not act like the Oregon defense was great in their own right. I think they did a pretty solid job against the run. But emotions are running high, Nick. They're certainly going to have to stay in check going on it's a short week going to Purdue. The Boilermakers are not going to lay down, so I think they're going to play tough, and I think this young quarterback Brown's going to continue to be spectacular and make some tough plays. So I think they're going to cover in this one. They're going to play them close. You're thinking the vast opposite, which is crazy because, again, this is an emotional win that you're coming off of. Probably the biggest one in college football this year, so to expect them to just come on the road in CFB and be consistently great, it's just a tough bet to make, I would say, because this is college football at the end of the day. You can lose by 60 this week, turn around next week, and hang with a top 5 opponent. I think Purdue's going to do that on Friday night.
I feel like I'm going against my own sort of guts and saying this by picking Purdue to lose by a large margin here, but I think any other year I'd pick this game to be significantly close because I've said many times on this show that West Lafayette is where ranked teams' dreams go to die. We've seen it in the AP poll since 1936. No unranked team has been more successful against the number 1 or number 2 team in the country, having 9 wins against top 1 or 2 teams in the nation in the AP poll era. A very interesting stat, and including 2 of those wins are wins that have occurred in the past 10 years, that is, including the famous one at West Lafayette where they beat Ohio State 49-20 in a game that everyone remembers from 2018, a game that I look very fondly on. And again, any other year I'd probably pick Purdue to keep this, a 10-7 point game. But this year I think this is just different. This Purdue team I don't think is very good. I know they had a great close battle with Illinois, and I think the quarterback change is certainly something that Oregon has to keep an eye on because there isn't a whole lot of film on Brown, who looked really good. 365 for him, 67% comp rate, 3 touchdowns in his lone start. Really solid performance there. And the running back room has shown some success at times. Devin McAbee is not a bad back, 464 and 2 scores for him, while Reggie Love is not terrible either with 2 scores on the ground and 262. They got a lot of big tight end play they like to run in this scheme. Max Clare is not a bad tight end at all. But I think Oregon just has too much pressure, and this feels like this is Dan Lanning's best chance at getting to a national title game with this roster. Dylan Gabriel has been plug and play, almost perfect. It's kind of crazy Oklahoma ran him out of town. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense because Gabriel's been phenomenal. Almost 1,800 yards passing, 76% comp rate, 13 touchdowns to 3 picks. Really good. Tez Johnson has been an incredible target for him. Evan Stewart has looked amazing coming over to this program, 331 and 3 scores. Johnson with the 6 touchdowns. Trayshawn Holden, he got ejected from the game. Wonder how his head is at this moment in time, how his emotions are going after he got ejected for spitting on a player. That was a bit of a poor performance from Holden. Terrence Ferguson's been really good at tight end for this team so far this year as well. Jordan James, Noah Whittingham, both are having okay seasons. You wanted to see more in a Whittington, that is not Whittington. Jordan James has been the lead back carrying the way, 6 yards per carry and 6 scores. I think this Oregon team is just too good right now for a letdown spot. Again, any other year I'd probably pick this game to be extremely close, but this year I think this 1-5 Boilermakers team that got absolutely waxed at home by Notre Dame earlier in the year and got blown out by a Wisconsin team that I don't think is very good just a few weeks ago. I think the Boilermakers are in for a tough day. I think Oregon's going to run all over them. They're going to keep the tempo, play where they want to play, and get the job done and win this one by a boatload. Would I like it to be close? Absolutely. I think it's a lot of fun. I think having a potential upset on Friday night would be certainly worth watching. I just don't feel that confident enough to pick it. I think Oregon will cover the spread in this one and get the job done handily.
And it's important to note, even though the Boilermakers have been bad on defense, they do have 2 great players, Kaiden Jenkins at linebacker, one of the nation's top safeties, and Dylan Thieneman, and he hasn't had an interception yet this year, but his range is unbelievable. And I think, Gabriel's been making some mistakes this year. If Purdue's playing of energy, Nick, as a student, this is going to be a great game to go to because you have nothing to lose. You're expected to get blown out, and if you can keep it close, this is going to be a very rowdy place to be on a Friday night. I couldn't think of a better place to be this weekend than in West Lafayette because I really think this could be a fun game to attend. And if they can start playing with some energy, man, it might get a little hairy for the Ducks.
100%, I agree with you. I think this is an opportunity for an upset from Purdue. I think Dynaman's a really fun player to watch, 50 total tackles. I'm going with my gut and picking Oregon to win, even though my heart is telling me to pick Purdue to cover and keep it close. I'd love to see it. I'm going to be rooting for it. I just cannot pull the trigger on it. I got to get my picks up. I'm having a bit of a tough year against the spread, so I'm going to just go with what my gut is saying and really skip out on my heart, even though I think this is an incredibly fun matchup. This is the game I'll be watching Friday night. I will be tuned into this one because I do think there is potential for an upset if it goes the right way. And boy, would that be a crazy story. We've seen a lot of big upsets so far this year. Feels like 2007. Ask if Purdue can knock off Oregon. If Purdue at 1-5 can knock off Oregon on a Friday night, that will set all the dominoes in motion and continue to build on what has been a crazy upset season so far this year.
Now I move to a game that'll be going on a couple hours after that when BYU, 13th ranked in the country, hosting Oklahoma State. Kwani Satake and group doing a phenomenal job this year. Kind of reminds me of a couple seasons ago, Nick, where anytime it seemed like they were playing every game at home. They upset a ranked Arizona team. They knocked off Utah as well. This is a very tough playlist to play, especially when BYU is good. And the energy they've been showcasing on the defensive side of the ball is unreal. 14 total turnovers. They capitalize on every single one of them. That's why they beat the heck out of Kansas State, and that's why they were able to take care of Arizona by a pretty lengthy margin where they had 2 consecutive turnovers forced, ended up with 4 of them on the day, 3 interceptions as a total. Now you're going up against a quarterback in Alan Bowman who can't stop throwing picks. 59% comp rate, 8 interceptions. He is a gunslinger type mentality quarterback, 275 yards per game, 12 touchdowns. It's just been a rough go for this Pokes team. 3 losses in a row against fair opponents as well. It's just been a disappointing effort because this team had so much. The offensive line, they're playing so good in pass pro. PFF has 0 credited sacks to anyone on the offensive line. The run game's been horrid. Only 64 yards per game for Ollie Gordon. 384 and 4 touchdowns this year. It's a great group of receivers. Deshaun Stribling has really emerged last couple of games alongside Rashawn Owens and Brendan Presley. This is just a team significantly underperforming, and it just, I don't know, Gundy is just having, a whirlwind right now, and I think the bye week is certainly big for them, especially when they're trying to get Nick Martin back healthy. I hope he'll play. It seems a little unlikely for Colin Oliver to play in this game. The defense has been awful, though. 559 and then 558 allowed in the last 2 games, 300-plus rushing over the last 2 allowed in each game, and then 250 for Utah. This has been a horrid run defense, Nick. I mean, this is just no good from them. We knew the defense would be a bit of a struggle group. Didn't think it'd be this poor, and then you take their top 2 linebackers out of the equation, and they've just gotten as bad as you can be going up against a BYU team on offense, who I really kind of think's overachieving, and I think at some point they'll probably be in for a bit of a humbling. Jake Retzloff, he's playing good. 14 touchdowns, 5 picks, 237 yards per game. He's got good veteran pass catchers in Chase Roberts and Darius Lassiter. They also have a nice physical offensive line, even though they're not running the ball that well. The return of LJ Martin, I think, should certainly help with that. And they've been stable the last 2 games with right about 150 yards. And that's kind of the number they're getting every single week. I think at some point BYU's probably going to be in for a big letdown, but at home and another night game, there's no way they're going to lose this one, right? But I think Oklahoma State off a bye week, they've underachieved this far. They're going to be in for a much better effort. So I'm going to pick them to cover, play this one close, 24-17. It's really hard to do that, Nick, because Oklahoma State has just been so disappointing. This team had so much potential, but you can't come into this game sleepwalking. I don't think they will in Provo. I think the cover is in store. You're leaning otherwise, which I think is possible because, again, they capitalize on every single turnover, and Bowman loves to give it away. But I'll take the Pokes to cover, not all that confident, though.
I do like the way this BYU team capitalized. I don't think anyone in the media had BYU being this dominant so far this season at 6-0 and 13 in the nation. I really think if you were guessing that, you looked a little crazy in the preseason. This team has really grinded out these wins. They've been really solid. They've been able to capitalize on the good field position. They make sure they get points when they get turnovers. A lot of disciplined football, really strong unit in that regard. And I like this team to win and cover this game. I think this is a very talented roster. That while we knew it was a talented roster, we just didn't know if it would transition well and how would they look in this conference this year. Retzlaff has been really good. 1,400 yards passing, 6% comp rate, 14 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. He's got to be a little careful. Try and prevent turning the ball over a little bit. I think he's got just a little bit more careful. But in general, I think he's been really solid. The 14 touchdowns is a really good number. He leads the team in rushing yards as well, about 184 and 1 touchdown. I do think if there's something that is going to unravel this BYU team in the future, it is running the ball. I think there is some issues at time running the ball. I know they're averaging 140 per game through a by committee approach, but I think there will be a moment in time where they play a tougher team and they're not able to run the ball effectively with the way that they try to have this multiple different options in the backfield between Ropati, Martin, and a couple of different other pieces, and Retzlaff, obviously, who's able to run the ball. I like what they have in the wide receiver room. I mean, Chase Roberts has been really fun to watch. Darius Lassiter has been really fun to watch as well. Each of them have 3 touchdowns so far this season. The defense has really been good at times. I like the takeaways. I like the way they're able to get in the backfield and get sacks. Jack Kelly, a linebacker, has 3 sacks this year and a pass breakup. He's been really solid, plus a forced fumble that he recovered. So he's been a really good key piece. Harrison Taggart's been really good for this team as well at linebacker. So overall, I like this BYU team. When you look at Oklahoma State, it's sort of a what-if story. Ollie Gordon's not living up to the potential that he set for himself last year, and certainly, it's okay to underachieve compared to where the high bar he set last year, but being at 384 and 4 touchdowns so far this season is not good enough. Alan Bowman's been a complete disaster, a veteran player who should know a lot better than having 8 picks and a 59% comp rate, 600 yards passing, 12 touchdowns. Stribling's been fun to watch, and I think there's some solid pieces. I think Trey Rucker at safety for this team with 69 total tackles and 2 picks is certainly a guy that's going to want to try and take advantage of some of those Retzlaff mistakes that he makes occasionally, while Nick Martin is a really good leader at linebacker who's having a decent season himself. I think the Pokes are a bit of a mess right now. Gundy's team is at 3-3. They seem a little lost. They seem a little confused. I was high on this team in the preseason. They've been disappointing so far this season. I think this team up in Provo has a ton of energy. They're playing really good football. They're playing really solid across the board. They put up 41 points against Arizona this past weekend. They put up at least 30 in their last 4 games. They beat a good SMU team on the road that's turning into a better win each week as SMU is rounding more into the team that we thought they were going to be this year. Meanwhile, Oklahoma State's lost 3 in a row and looks to be a complete rudderless ship, including a loss to West Virginia, a team that's really not that good this year. I like the Cougars in this one. I think they'll cover the spread. I'm having them winning, by 17, something like that, getting the job done, and moving to 7-0. And really, with the Big 12 being wide open, this team could certainly make a run for the playoffs.
A few more notes on this one. Tyler Beatty, defensive end. He's such an elite player, one of the best in the country at his position. 9 different players have the 10 interceptions for BYU. So you're getting a lot out of everybody. And then I also wonder what will happen with BYU when these turnovers start drying up. It doesn't seem like that'll happen this weekend, but all of a sudden when they're not forcing turnovers, how good will this team be? I'm really not sure, but if that's the case, I think certainly Oklahoma State can win this game coming off a bye week. And then the final one we'll discuss at 10:30 for the Degenerates out in Reno, Nevada, hosting Fresno State. And obviously we like to talk about these games, Nick. Nobody else in the country probably is, but they're always fun to analyze, especially when you have lines like 2.5 and the total being 50.5. There's a lot of people that are certainly going to be interested in our opinion on this contest. You look at Fresno State, a team that's coming off a pretty impressive defensive effort against Washington State. John Mateer and crew, they've been on fire. They held them to 295 yards, 25 points. While on the other side of things, though, the offense didn't really produce against the defense that was also, equally not as great. Last 2 games for Fresno on the offensive side of the ball, they've been held to under 20 points. It hasn't been splendid by any means. I think they're underachieving. Mikey Keene at quarterback, 8 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's capable of a lot more, especially the last 2 where he's thrown a combined 4. So it's not been great for him, but he has some nice receivers. Jalen Moss, Raylan Sharp, Magdalena. These guys all have over 300 yards at this point in the season. At running back, Elijah Gillum's been respectable. They got Malik Sherrod back from injury, so they're hoping he can provide some better effort in this one. Going up against a Nevada team on defense, they're giving up 27 points per game. Against the run, they've been less than stellar. Against the pass, they haven't been any better. Almost 1,800 yards allowed. It's one of the worst in the country, including 2 straight games of 300-plus yards allowed. They were able to snag 4 interceptions, though, against Oregon State, up to 7 now on the year. So maybe there's some energy they can play off on their side of the ball. Drew Watts, I think, is a good linebacker. Keaton Crawford at safety was a big addition for him. Michael Coates at corners playing very good this year. He's got 3 picks on the season. I think this is a very intriguing matchup. This team has been running the ball very well. Fabian Red, the Texas transfer, you knew he was going to have a nice impact, and he has. 600 yards and 7 scores. Brendan Lewis, 500-plus rushing and 4. Pat Garwo, a physical running back, got 230 and 5 scores. 353 and 5 scores they put up against Oregon State. Put up 320 a couple weeks earlier against Eastern Washington. This is a team that runs the ball very well, Nick, in terms of throwing the ball. Probably not as confident Lewis is having probably the best season of his career, though. 67% comp rate, only 5 picks, 161 yards per game. It certainly is better than we've seen in the past against Fresno State, though. I think this defense is probably in for another good effort. They held them in check throwing the ball last week, so they're going to have to come in here and defend the run better, and they did against UNLV, who had 252 and 3 scores. It's kind of the lone outlier. Other than that, the run defense has been pretty sharp for Fresno, Nick. I just think this will be a close game. I think Nevada, they're going to play good on offense. Their defense has been pretty good this year. Fresno, they've been kind of lollygagging on offense as of late. 28-27 final score for me. I'm going to take UNLV to cover, or not UNLV, Nevada to cover, and then Fresno to win the game.
It's an interesting matchup here. I have Fresno winning by a larger margin than most people probably do, having them win by 2 touchdowns. So I do think the run defense will be the big key. I think Saban Red's a really good back. I think he's a really talented player. I like watching him, nearly 600 rushing and 7 touchdowns. But I think he's going to have a bad game here. I think this Fresno State run defense is a really good unit that will be able to stuff the run and help out their offense. I'm expecting maybe a turnover or 2. I think Lewis is not a bad player, but has shown some issues at time. 9 touchdowns, 5 picks, 1,100 yards passing. While Mikey Keene's also shown some issues as well with the 8 touchdowns, 8 picks, 1,500 yards passing. This team hung in there with Wazoo, though. That defense really stood strong and only gave up 25 points to what is a really dynamite offense. They've looked good in their wins against weaker opponents, just share the 2 New Mexico schools in Sacramento State. They also looked good against Michigan. I know Michigan's not a great team this year compared to where they were last year. But Fresno State hung around in that one. Gillam's a really solid back, in my opinion, 295 and 3 touchdowns. I expect Fresno State to run the ball a lot here. I expect them to go to the pass when they need to. I think Gillam will have a good day. I think Malik Sherrod will have a solid day as well. He's got 4 touchdowns. He's been really good in the red zone for this Fresno State Bulldogs team. This is a team that I do think has what it takes to win this game by 2 touchdowns. I think their defense will be strong, get a bunch of key stops. This Wolfpack team, they've definitely overachieved compared to my expectations, but they've also had a lot of letdowns at times. Getting blown out 27-0 against Minnesota, losing to Georgia Southern, losing at San Jose State are some losses that aren't phenomenal. I know they played SMU close on week 0 in a game that gave me a headache, as I had SMU with the points, which was like 1 billion points that they ended up covering in that game and nearly won that game. But overall, I think Fresno State's a really talented team. I know they got blown out by UNLV, which is really the one big blemish on their resume when you look at all things considered at 3-3 so far this season. But I like the running back room. I think Gillam is really solid. I think Sherrod's a really solid piece. I like the defense a lot. They stuff the run. They're really good in the interior. They're really good coming off the edge as well. I like them to have a good day. Saban Red struggle a little bit. Fresno State to put up some points through the air, on the ground, and get the job done late night on the East Coast Friday night.
Yeah, it's the best defensive effort of the year so far against probably the best offense they've seen all year. 4 sacks, 10 TFL, Jacob Holmes, Corey Foreman, playing very good for Fresno State on defense. So I think that'll continue, but I think Nevada won't just lay over. I think they'll play some good ball because they've played very good this season. I think and Jeff Choate's doing a pretty good job with this program so far this year. They've competed in pretty much every loss, other than the one against Minnesota. They got 27-0 to that one. But other than that, it's been a very impressive team this season. I think this will be a close contest. That's going to be it for today's episode. As always, Nick, these Thursday, Friday games, a lot of people don't care about. We love to cover these ones because this is where the magic happens late night. This is where a lot of excitement happens. This is where also you can make a good amount of money, too, playing some of these lines.
Once you get to October, I think those Thursday, Friday games get really interesting as a lot of the top Power 4 conferences have at least 1 or 2 games from their conference taking place. And, of course, you always see the Sun Belt playing on these Thursday night games. There's a lot of intriguing matchups in the Sun Belt on Thursdays across the rest of the season. The ACC's got 2 games on Thursday and Friday night, respectively. The Big Ten throws a game in there normally. Then the Big 12 has one as well. So there's certainly some interesting matchups to see on these weeknight games. Some big teams playing, Oregon, BYU, top 15 teams, plus an interesting matchup between Florida State and Duke. I like this slate a lot, and I look forward to watching it Thursday and Friday night.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.